Good to go. All right, broadcast manager. How do we automate the distribution of Stratum reports? How do we send these out to groups of people? How do we send them via email or send the files out to Excel into a file share? There's all kinds of wonderful things we could do with the broadcast manager. And that's our topic today. We'll talk about the components of the broadcast manager, which would be the actions and then grouping them into groups, then scheduling the groups. Of course, we want to schedule these and automate them on a scheduled basis. Users, how do we send them out to regular viewer users or Stratum users or users outside of the company? These are things that we'll talk about, and then we're going to go into a demo. So I don't want to spend too much time on the slides, but just to kind of define some concepts here. Obviously, Stratum is the application we're talking about. Today, we'll be talking about getting data out of Stratum. So down here on the right side, where we're getting data out, you can see the little arrows pointing outwards, meaning we're getting data out of the application. And today we'll be talking about email distribution, basically, and sending files or views out via email or to the your LAN, your local area network, and scheduling those to run automatically. Okay, so that involves the broadcast manager. And what exactly is the broadcast manager? Well, you can think of it as an extension of the Stratum viewer product, and it provides the ability to basically deliver Stratum data to users on a scheduled basis. And this leverages your views that you have today. It will leverage existing users and role security. So you could send one view out to multiple users without worrying about them seeing data that they're not allowed to see. So that's something that's available. And it's flexible, of course. You can allow the users to control the scheduling of their existing reports, and they can drive what schedule they want to latch onto. So basically, an action will need to be defined within a view, and it defines basically an action basically defines who's going to receive the report, what report, of course, that's done within the view itself. An action can have more than one view, just so you know. And then how do we schedule it? When will it be sent and how will it be sent? So those are the things we want to talk about, setting up an action. What is an action, basically? How do we group them? How do we schedule them? And so we have Broadcast Manager that will basically allow us to do that and create these actions and basically set up a network of reporting, essentially. And you'll have groups of reports being sent on certain days, others that will be sent maybe perhaps on just business days or daily, Monday through Friday. So you can decide what the schedule is going to be. And then on the back end side, obviously there's some things on the back end that need to be done in order to make the schedules actually work, right? So you'll have to set up some things on the server side so that these schedules, they have substance behind them. There's actually something that runs, as opposed to just setting up a schedule and not having anything connected to it. Okay, so the broadcast manager, so these actions, again, it's report content that can be made up of a single view or multiple views. They can be delivered in a single Excel file. They can also be distributed to a network location. Recipients can be outside of your company or inside. So you do have a concept of sending a report out to somebody outside of your company that is available, and can be scheduled by the user. So these are all things that can be done through the broadcast manager. Grouping and scheduling, again, we know that they can schedule their own actions. They can remove or reassign them to different schedules as they see fit. And administrative controls are available to limit a user access to schedules. So obviously the users regular users can't really get to the schedule portion. So you don't want them to either. So let's take a look at this in action. I know we talked a little bit about what the broadcast manager is, what an action is, how do we put them in the groups and scheduling. And so these are some of the major components. You do get log files that are produced so that if there is an error or something did not run properly, a log file is produced and actually emailed to the administrator, which is nice. So let's talk a bit more about that, but let's get into the product. So I want to show this actually in live product. Here we have Stratum open. We've got the latest and greatest version right here. And what I want to show is the ability to look at existing actions. We can add a new action as needed. But how do we access the actions? How do we administer them? The groups, the schedules, where is all that located? So while running the new product, in prior versions, you might have an admin utilities menu on the left frame. That's where you'll find it. In some of the newer versions, we moved that to the hamburger menu in the upper right-hand corner. And if we go to analyst tools, we can see that we can gain access to our actions. We see that we can gain access to our broadcast group, our broadcast schedules. So all of that is available through the hamburger menu here. So if I go directly into action, I can then see all the actions that are available within the Stratum environment. And we can see that we've got quite a few here that are created by different owners. Today, I'll be concentrating on the ones that I've created. I've got one called comparative sales. I've got another one here called daily sales package that have been grouped together to run on a daily basis. So if I go into my comparative sales action, I can just simply double click on it and we can see that the action itself, the name, we can describe it as needed. An action can be global or personal. So if this is something that you want to share and let other people have access to it, that's something that is a decision you can make. Here I'm processing it just for myself, but you'll have a network of folks here selected. You can go and select more people here in your application and they will appear here. If you have people that are set up for outside access, they will also appear here, but we only store their email address so that we can actually send them an email. You'll have two different types of distribution methods of sending out this report. You can email it or you can send it to a file location. So that's obviously just two options. In this case, I'm emailing it to myself. It's going to be an Excel file, but I can just send a snapshot of the view if I wanted to. It's like a GIF. It's almost like a GIF image of the actual view itself. I'm sending an Excel file. Do I want to keep this in a single file? Yeah, I do. Most of the time you'll want to do this. You can separate them out. If you go in and say no to this, it will separate them into separate. If you have different views within this action, then you'll have multiple Excel files instead of just one. Keeping them single will have, if this action has multiple views associated to it, then it'll have one Excel file with multiple worksheets inside of it for each view. So that's available. Here you can decide what you want to do. Do I want to make it look pretty, or do I just care about raw data? So that's kind of the difference between these two options of setting up the action. You can decide, well, maybe I do want those wonderful column row colors and the traffic lighting and all that other stuff. And then you can decide what you want to do there. Do I want to include the view details? Normally that's defaulted to yes, and I would suggest that you keep it that way. That'll just provide more details about the view. Any filtering and sorting and whatnot will be described within the Excel file, which is what I would think that's what you would want. So, all right, and then the email portion down here is this is basically going to tell you what the email is going to say, the subject, the body. This is all free form, so you can type in whatever you want. So be careful. Do you want to include a link back to the view? It's defaulted to yes. So if you're sending this out to people that can have access to viewer, you're going to want to keep this on, so they can also not only grab the file from the email, but in case they want to say, jump into that view, then they'll have a quick link directly to jump right into that view. Do I want to send an email when no data exists? In this case, I'm saying yes, but normally, you can say no to this, and then that way, if the view yields no data, then the no email is sent. So this kind of gets into the concept of an alert. So if you have a view that maybe just shows negative gross margin, maybe you have items that are not profitable or customers that are not being profitable, then you can have a view that just shows negative profitability. And then if you have a wonderful day where you have all your customers are positive profitable, which hopefully they are, then no data should get produced, and then I should not receive an email. Okay, probably a better example would be like inventory levels. So if all your inventory is ideally stocked and you're not violating any safety stock, then no email will get produced, because if you create a view that just shows items that are violating their safety stocks, then obviously it would just filter on those items. So that's how you can manipulate the view to behave like an alert in tandem with the action. And specifically this particular feature, by being able to say yes or no to this, is really the magic. That in the view, right, is the magic behind creating an alert. I've got two views here in this action. So I can see that we're sending out a couple of views: ABC class sales, comparative sales. And we can see down further that it belongs to a group called daily flash reports. And we can see that so basically we can see that that's basically belongs to the groups of daily flash reports, and it contains two views: comparative sales and ABC class sales based. So that's one way to access your actions. I'm just going to say no to not saving it. Okay, and so and then I've got another action here called daily sales package that I'm also including in my group, and this actually includes three views within this particular action. So all in all, I'm sending out 5 views, it appears. Now, if I go back to my hamburger menu, back into analyst tools, if I go to broadcast group, then I can see that how these are grouped together. So if I go inside of the daily flash reports group, I can see that it involves these 2 actions, which we just looked at. And we know that these actions have multiple views in them. And then we also can see that this particular group belongs to a schedule, which is ideal. That's what we want. And we can see that the schedule is running at 1 a.m. every day. And this is live. This is actually something that runs live every day. I actually ran it interactively earlier just to produce some files. But yeah, this is something that is actually working. So this basically tells us everything in terms of what it will contain and what schedule it's going to run at. If I wanted to add another schedule, I can click on the plus sign over there and add another schedule if I needed to, or I can remove this one by highlighting it and clicking on that little X over there to remove it, and then adding in, a new schedule or maybe something different. So you can manipulate these by these little plus and cancel signs over here on the right-hand side. So I also have an action that shows how to push out a file to a network location. So we have, like, for instance, Power BI exports. Maybe I'm exporting a group of Excel files for a Power BI report. Now, we don't necessarily need to do that anymore with our new Power BI connector, but this is something that we used to do. And so here we can see that we're pushing out views here, essentially, that will end up in Excel reports. How do I know that? Because we can see the distribution method is actually selected as file as opposed to email. meaning that this will be pushed out to a network location. And that's dictated on my user profile, because my user profile, I actually have a network location, a default network location. And then that gets pushed out to that location. It's actually on the server. And we can take a look at that because, like I said, this actually runs on a daily basis. If I look at my user profile, if I go into manage things into user profile, I can see under my user profile, there is that network location. And it's a UNC path for you techie folks out there. So that's where all my files will end up. Now, this could be something that's a share that, I don't necessarily have to be on the server to gain access to these files. I can just go through my file explorer on Windows to get access to these files. So that's what's going on, and I'm gonna finally show you the schedule, the broadcast schedule. We can see that there's a couple of them, but I just concentrating on the daily schedule. We can see that indeed includes 2 broadcast groups, the daily flash reports that we're really concentrating on, but we can see that those Excel reports are going to get pushed out to that server location as well, whenever this schedule is run. And we'll note that the schedule ID is a 4. And why do I need to know that? Well, if we go to the server side, we can see how this thing gets scheduled. So here we can see on the server, I am currently in SQL Server Management Studio. And we can see in the agent, which is what I like to use to schedule these, I can see that I've got a job here set up within my agent to kick off that schedule. So if I double click on this job, I can see that I've got a step in here for my broadcast server. So if I double click on that, I can see that there's a command line, and that command line is pointed directly to my executable for the broadcast process. And guess what? There's that schedule ID of number 4. So rest assured, if I run this job, it's going to run everything within that schedule, right? Which basically are the groups that we looked at. And so we can see that that's our command line. So that's pretty simple. And so we can see, we'll take a look at that once more. It's basically a command line directly to that executable on the server, the broadcast process, sylvan.broadcastprocess.exe. And then there's an argument, some people call those a switch, telling it which schedule ID to run. Broadcast schedule ID equals 4. It's not too bad to set that up. It's not rocket science, that's for sure. Go into schedules, we can see that this is scheduled to run on a daily basis at 1:00 a.m. every day. So bright and early, we can see that, and you can set this up, that the agent is great. Now you can set up a reoccurring, you can do other things here as a one-time. I can set this up as a weekly or a monthly. So it's pretty flexible in terms of setting up your schedules within the SQL agent. You don't have to use the SQL agent. You can use Windows Task Scheduler. I have some folks that use Robot on the iSeries of all things. So yeah, it's a command line, right? You're just scheduling a command line with an argument. So you can really, at the end of the day, you can use whatever scheduling tool you want to use that can issue a command line. So that's it. I mean, in terms of scheduling it, and you're going to have multiple jobs, right? You have one that runs daily. You might have another job here that runs weekly. You might have one that runs monthly or quarterly. All of that can be set up within the agent here and scheduled appropriately. Well, let's run this. What happens if I right click and just run this interactively? We're going to go ahead and do that. So now it's actually running the job live. And this only takes probably less than a minute, I think, to issue the reports to my email and also push those reports to the server location as well. So now we're actually pushing data out to our users using the broadcast manager. And we're using both the file method and the email method so we can see both results. So this will be finishing up here shortly. We'll take a look, and there it is. So it's done. We'll go ahead and close this out. We'll go to my file manager. Indeed, I've got a new file. So there's my Power BI export Excel file that got pushed out to my LAN location, which is essentially a folder here on my server. And there's the date and time. So it matches right up to now. So that's worked perfectly. So if I have any applications that are tapped into that Excel file, the data has now been refreshed and I can tap into new and refreshed data. Users can come grab this file and they're off and running. So that's one way to serve up data. And then if I go to my email, I should see under my alerts that I will have a set of new emails. Indeed, I do. So what do I have here? Well, I've got one email telling me that this ran for my Power BI exports. So that tells me, indeed, those files are waiting for me. Here's my comparative sales. Those are the actual files that got pushed out. Here's the actual comparative sales export. We can see there's the ABC class-based link and the comparative sales. If I go into the comparative sales Excel file, we'll open that up. Let that open. And there's the Excel file. So now I've got two reports here. I've got an ABC class-based sales. I've also got a comparative sales view as well. Raw data is what we have here. So as you can see, nothing special. I just wanted my data in raw format. Maybe I'm integrating this with other applications or just running pivot tables over it. Here's that view detail, additional view detail. So it's telling me how many rows and columns I have, if there's any filtering going on. I also get a link back to the view showing me if I wanted to actually link back into the view. The daily sales reports are going to show you what the actual reports look like when you keep formatting. So in this case, we use the Excel report as opposed to Excel data option. And we can see that the row coloring, the traffic lighting, those all come across into my Excel report. And we can see the multiple views within this particular action. We can see that all the views have been included within my one Excel spreadsheet. So I can access all the different reports within the same Excel spreadsheet. So that is our email. So we not only did we get a set of emails, but we can also see, and then for the administrators, they'll get this email telling them that this action ran, the schedule ran. We can see that it ran successfully. And we can look at the log. We can come in here and now the log is attached. This is new. And we can see that indeed it ran just fine. And so now I can rest assured that everything is hunky-dory and my schedules are out the door, on my users are munching on data, and everything is awesome with the world. Any questions? Feel free to unmute yourself. That's what I wanted to cover today. Setting up reports, setting up actions, just so you know, and whenever you're within a view, if I'm going to any one of my views, I can right click and add an action at any view at any time. So here I can see on the right click menu, while I'm within a view, I can actually add an action on the fly and save it to this view. So, it's an easy way to add actions. You might have a report and you might think to yourself, gosh, I'd love to email this to me and my colleagues or to my team and have this sent out on a daily basis. Well, I can do that right now by setting up this action, applying it to a group, making sure that I put it to the daily reports group, and I'm set. And there's really not much else I need to do other than just defining my action and saving it away. And then, tomorrow morning, this action, now that it belongs to that group that I saved it to, will then be part of the email as well. So that's Broadcast Manager. Just want to make sure that you're aware that that's available through our Access Hub license. And if you're not familiar with your licensing, well, give me a call. We can talk about it and we can see if you have access to it. You may already have access to it. You may not know it. So definitely give me a shout and let me know if you're interested. not to mention our new graphs that are available, our new dashboarding, part of our latest release, version 7.4. Okay, well, I want to thank everyone for their time today. If you feel free to ask any questions, any comments, questions before we break.
I have one question.
Yes.
So you have it set up right now in your user account. Is there a way to set it up under a service account so that because we have turnover, right? So if someone sets up an action under themselves and then they're disabled, we would.
Yeah, absolutely. You certainly can do that.
Okay.
You can use the impersonation account if you want. You should have an impersonation account set up for this anyway, before to actually set off the on the server side. When you set that up, this is actually being run by an AD account as well.
Okay.
This AD account, by the way, when this runs and you want to send out emails, this should have an email address associated to it in the AD.
Got it.
Okay. So, and then that way it'll work. But yeah, I strongly recommend that. Yep. If you don't freak out. If you want to delete that user, viewer does have a way where it'll ask you what do you want to do with the views, the objects, and all that, and then you can transfer those